Alright, well, if you've clicked on this video, you probably did it because of the rage bait thumbnail and title that I put up there. Let me be really clear right off the bat. I like The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I think it's a good game. I just don't think it's a great one. And because of that, I think it's worth making a video where we talk about and dissect the little things that make it not perfect. There are plenty of videos talking about what's great about this game already, and I agree with a lot of those points. My favorite is probably the fusibility. It really does away with the crafting menus that have plagued open world games for the last decade. It's fantastic. But if I wanted to sit here and sing the praises of the game, this video would be about 4 hours. So let's focus on what isn't good about it. Couple things that I'll say before I start making points. For one, I am not a game developer, and I am not a child. I say this because I don't have either of those perspectives going into this when I talk about the bad things. I am a games player, and I know what I do and don't like in my pieces of art, which are subjective. So, if I say things and you disagree, that's fine. You probably just play games and enjoy them and perceive them differently from me. That's okay. I don't think that invalidates my experience, though. I also don't think that the argument that it's a kid's game is valid criticism against any of the points I'm going to make, because, well, for one, a game can be rated E for everyone and still be absolutely excellent. A game like Earthbound, a game like Portal 2, those are definitely appropriate for all audiences, and they do not treat the player like they're stupid, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Besides, who was in line at GameStop at all hours of the night waiting to get their copy? It wasn't children, I'll tell you that much. Anyway, we're at the 2.5 minute mark right now and I haven't said anything, so let's get into it. My first big issue with this game is repetition. This was not something that Breath of the Wild was free of. But this video isn't comparing Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. We're going to talk about Tears of the Kingdom because it had many chances to rectify what was wrong with Breath of the Wild, and I don't think it did by adding more repetitious tasks. See, because my issue with Tears of the Kingdom is that there isn't a lot to do. It just seems that way. There are about 20 to 30 things to do, and they are copy-pasted all over the land with slight, tiny variations to them. My least favorite of those is probably the booble frogs. I really just, after my 4th or 5th encounter with these things, I was like, why am I collecting these? The little gremlins that you have to interact with in order to get your stuff as a reward for collecting the booble frog gems is also really just not pleasant. But again, subjective. What isn't subjective though is how much these things are copy pasted all over the place. And I think that kind of kills the spectacle, because once you've played about 15 or 20 hours of the game, you've probably seen just about everything that the game has to offer. Sure, the first time that a stone talus rises up, you thought it was originally an enemy base, and now there's this towering stone monster with bokoblins all over it, firing arrows at you. It's interesting. But then it happens 10 more times in the next 10 hours, and the spectacle is lost. Which is unfortunate, because the first time that it happens, it's really wonderful. Now, there are moments in Tears of the Kingdom where something really unique happens, and I think those are the most memorable parts of it. There are some islands in the sky where the gravity functions much lower. You can see this in the trailer for the game, and that only happens, I think, once or twice in certain areas of the Sky Islands, and those are very special, memorable moments, because once you enter those areas, it's so sudden, and all of a sudden, your character controls differently. The game feels different. It's a sense of wonder of what's going on. Why is the game like this? So I feel like once I get to the 20-hour mark in this game, and I've encountered my 3rd run-in with the stone talus that has the enemies on its back, I'm like, whatever, I've seen this before. And it doesn't help that Tears of the Kingdom is a sequel to a game, and that it is reusing a lot of assets from that original game. Things are different, slightly, but a lot of the things are similar and familiar, and I don't think it's different enough to warrant doing the same copy-paste stuff all over the place. And perhaps I'm just a little spoiled, because in terms of open world fantasy games, we got Elden Ring last year. And Elden Ring was so rife with creativity new enemies and areas at every turn. There was hardly any repetition in the exploration of Elden Ring. But when exploring the world of Tears of the Kingdom, I feel like I run into areas and I go, okay, here's some more moblins and bokoblins and arrowkudas to shoot at for a few minutes. I'll pick up some more of those zoanite rocks and I'll go along my way. And I don't feel very satisfied when I have to do that for the umpteenth time. Now, there's an argument to be made that the process by which you approach these things is the creative side of it. Then the onus is on me as a player to create the originality in the encounter, right? And that's cool, that's fine. We've been given this Gary's Mod suite of tools and items to use to make things interesting. The problem is, maybe, just maybe, when I come up with one solution that works for everything, I no longer feel inclined to work with the puzzles or the elements or the any of these little tiny tasks that are scattered throughout the world. Addison, the Hudson simp guy with the sign that you can't let fall over. You can do every single one of his puzzles by taking a stake and making sure that it's elevated the right amount in the ground, and the sign will never fall over. Why would I ever do one of these again when I know that that is the solution 100% of the time? It's like going to school and being told you can do this optional test, you'll get a bit of candy if you do it, but the questions are all 2 + 2 and 4 + 4. So the reward does not justify me going through this tedious BS that honestly feels a bit stupid to me at this point because things have been made so simple. The Korok quests are a bit more interesting because there's a lot of variety to them. Obviously, there's some where you just pick up a rock in a high place and then I'm upset because, well, obviously that's what I had to do. But then there's these new ones where you are meant to carry a stranded Korok to a friend of theirs at a campfire about 4 kilometers west. That was intriguing at first, and then I realized that I could plop him on the back of a wing plus cart plus fans plus steering stick, and I never really had to think beyond that each and every time that I ran into one. And that brings me to the main issue that I have with how the game wants you to approach things, and that's that it doesn't really know how it wants you to approach things. It wants to give you a bunch of items and tools and say, you figure it out, and because of that, I think genuinely that Tears of the Kingdom gives you too much freedom. And I know that that's an awful sentence, and I don't like the way that it sounds, but I do mean it. This is especially evident in the shrines, which I think have been completely and utterly downgraded from Breath of the Wild. In Breath of the Wild, your tool set was very limited and specific. Magnesis only worked on metallic objects, Cryonis only worked on bodies of water, the Stasis ability only worked on certain objects. In Tears of the Kingdom, Ultra Hand works on virtually any physics object, and Ascend is just entirely broken because any flat surface or even slanted surfaces can be manipulated and you can teleport through them. The issue becomes that shrines are no longer this instance of, we're going to give you a very strict set of puzzle elements and you're going to work with them to solve this puzzle, like a portal test chamber. It becomes, here's a sandbox for you to play around with a bunch of shit that we've left around, and I want you to make something of it. It's no longer, here are the puzzle pieces, fit them together. It's, I want you to make the puzzle pieces and tell me when you're happy with it. And the result is I feel completely unsatisfied with any of the solutions I come up with because I don't know if they're the right ones. And sure, the argument then becomes, well, there is no right way, it's however you solve it. But these puzzles are clearly designed with certain elements and certain ways to do things in mind, and then I don't know if I've even achieved the right way or not because of the amount of freedom that I'm given in approaching them. That aha moment when you finally figure out, oh, I'm supposed to use this and this to do this, is completely evaporated because all of the tools and things that I can use to solve the puzzle are so massively manipulatable that I can just do whatever I want and fling myself into the air and paraglide across something when I was maybe supposed to build a bridge. I understand why people like this. I really do. It comes back to the Garry's Mod sandbox sense of I can do whatever I want. And that's liberating for some people. But in terms of puzzle solutions, I just don't enjoy that model. I feel like Nintendo is just looking at me and going, I don't know, man, do whatever you want. I don't care. I feel kind of insignificant in the grand scheme of things. And I don't feel like I'm making something work. I feel like I'm just doing. And this massive amount of freedom isn't even limited to the shrines. It extends to, of course, the temples, the dungeons of this game, which some of them are interesting. There are some cool pieces to the water temple and the wind temple. I think they're well done and they have very cool, interesting set pieces. The fire temple. The fire temple. The fire temple. I have so much contempt for this thing. As you approach it, in the depths, the darkness looming, the imposing figure of this castle of lava before you. It slowly fades in from the distance, getting larger and larger. It's so intimidating and menacing and evil. It's just dripping with atmosphere. And then you actually get to the puzzles that you have to do, and you go, oh, I'm playing Thomas the Tank Engine from when I was little, except it's really fucking annoying. I don't think there was a single instance of this temple where I did things quote unquote the right way. I didn't use any of the mine carts to get along the rails and change the way that the rails were supposed to go. I strapped a rocket to my shield, paraglided across the way, and used Ascend to get through every single rooftop that I could because it's just so damn easy to manipulate it. You could say, oh, well, Clockwork, you're upset because you did it to yourself. You did the easy way out. Shut the f*** up. If I can do this at all, it's Nintendo's fault. Also, if you wanted to restrict my abilities while I'm inside the temple, you can do that. But the problem is the game is so built around these sandbox features that the freedom is inherent to how you approach things. And so you're just left with do whatever you want, and then I do whatever I want, and I go, I don't feel like that was very fun. And that brings me to my next big issue with the game, which is repetition, which is not something that Breath of the Wild was free of. And if you recognize that I'm repeating myself at this point, you should be able to recognize the way that the sages repeat themselves when you go to do the main story missions and they all regurgitate the same damn points in the same 10-minute cutscene that I don't want to watch over and over again. I really understand the way that this is built, right? I'm not an idiot. I'm not a game developer, but I'm not an idiot. You can approach any of the main 4 sage quests in any order that you want. You don't need to go to Rito Village right the way. I went to the Fire Temple first, and because of that, we have to have the first encounter tell you the story. The thing is, I have seen people heaping praise onto this game for the little details. Oh, they pay so much attention to how alive the world is. When you talk to a certain character and you're wearing something funny, they comment on it. Or when you talk to a certain character at a certain time of day, they mention how the sun looks so pretty and all these little things. So why is that same design philosophy not applied to the main quests of the game? Why is it that I can go to the Fire Temple and get the story, and then I should be able to go to the other 3 and have some sort of recognition that this story has been told before and that I understand it and that I don't need to hear about Secret Stone, Demon King again? I don't. It's either completely infantilizing or just they have to do the same thing over and over again because if not, I guess some Nintendo fans explode like on the spot and they don't want to be responsible for the cleanup detail. I don't get it. And it's not even enough that all of this is like this, that it's, oh, I have to have the repeated story beats over and over again. Linear storytelling is at odds with open world game design to begin with, but I say that and then something like Subnautica exists, so whatever. That's kind of the lesser of my points about the sages anyway. The bigger issue I take is with their dialogue and their voice acting. The voice acting is super irritating just because they all sound like they're anime abridged characters that can't stop pinching their own tracheas for 2 seconds. And then on top of that, the dialogue is written, it's so trite, it's so insanely predictable. It's the most basic fantasy quest storytelling you'll ever get in a video game, and I was invested in absolutely none of the characters. I did not care about any of them. I guess Sidon maybe a little bit because of his wife, but that's all I got out of it.
We're here to help you, Link. We'll fight by your side no matter what. I guess I'm the Sage of Time now.
Yep, hated it, couldn't stand it, super annoying.
And it's super mind-boggling to me that people played Breath of the Wild and went, "Oh, I need more of the story though. This didn't satisfy my desire for Zelda stuff at all." And there was not that much character or dialogue in that game, but that was for the better, because the dialogue and the writing was all the same level as this. So in Tears of the Kingdom, it's just more of the annoying stuff that I didn't like about Breath of the Wild. I appreciate the story, the actual plot itself on a macro scale, but the way that it's told is, let's repeat the same thing 9 times so that this little 9-year-old playing the game really gets it. But how many of us playing this are 9 years old? And then functionally, the sages are also nuisances, because for one, they offer much different abilities than they did in Breath of the Wild. Some are improvements, some are downgrades. I'll leave that one up to you to decide which is which. But they follow you on the battlefield in a spirit form. And that's kind of cool for combat. It means that there can be more enemies on the field and you can have certain spirits distracting things while you go and fight your own battle. Cool. I like that. What I don't like is the way that I have to walk up to them to use my abilities, because what ends up happening is I try to go to Yunobo to blow up a wall, and he walks away from me, and then I pick Riju, and she wants to shoot lightning at something, and then when it's time for me to actually go pick up an item, they all swarm around me like a bunch of little ants going after a piece of cheese on a hot summer day.
Even more mind-boggling than this is the fact that there is a slot on the menu, the little radial wheel, that I guarantee no one has used, and it's a map function. Nobody is using the radial wheel to open the map. Why is there not an option to bind like the spirits to a second part of the wheel like that? You know, in Counter-Strike Global Offensive, when you press buy and you click one of the wheels and it opens another sub-menu of the wheel? Why couldn't we have the 4 spirits bound to that? Yeah, I just don't know what they were thinking by having the abilities bound to stupid, dumb as bricks AI. It just leads to a bunch of minor frustrations. So yeah, I wish a lot of stuff with the sages was done better, especially the story though, because I feel like there is an interesting plot here, and a much darker one than Breath of the Wild at that, but then I feel like it can't decide if it wants to be a kid's game or not, because the story is dark. It's about a war. It's about the death of like thousands of people and the rule of dark and evil magic, and you're going down these deep dark tunnels to meet mummified spirits. And then the dialogue is written like a kid's show where they have to explain things 6 times over. Granted, a lot of those darker story beats are found in the geoglyphs, which are scattered around the map, and I also wish was done a bit differently, because what they do is they tell you, okay, here's the first geoglyph, it's right next to Lookout Landing, so you're definitely gonna go check it out when you blast out of the sky tower and see this big green thing on the ground. That's good game design. It is. Problem is, you do that first one, you get the first taste of the story, and then Impa says 2 things that are contradictory. She says, we need to go and find more of these, and also come meet me at this forgotten temple all the way across the map, which is out of the way from wherever you want to go next, I guarantee it. And the thing that's in that forgotten temple is a map of where all the geoglyphs are, and a rotary symbol
tapestry, stone etching, whatever the hell, that shows you the order in which the story goes. Why wasn't this the first thing you find? You could have had, like, just anything. You could have had a sample of the stuff in Pura's lab to indicate the order of the story. I thought that I was supposed to go run around and just find these things at random, so I was getting a whole bunch of the story out of order. And I know, I can hear you thinking it already. I can hear the gears in your brain turning. Oh, why didn't you go follow Impa? Because that's not the game's design philosophy. If this game wanted to be linear and it wanted to have me do things in a certain order, it would tell me to shut up, not explore, and do them that way. But it doesn't. It tells you to go off and do whatever you want, and that will always be at odds with a linear story that wants to be told in a certain fashion. If Zelda wants to tell a linear story, it needs to do that in a linear fashion. I don't know what to tell you there. Anyway, the cutscenes themselves were pretty cool. Well animated. I liked all of the stuff with Raru and Zelda and Ganon. It was cool. Big in scale for some of them. But I can't help but feeling that some of the more tight and intimate ones, it was just like, you know, when the sages and Raru are fighting Ganon, it's like, why are we laid out like a bunch of like Bionicle sets in some nondescript dark area fighting each other, but we're not actually fighting each other, we're just gonna stare at each other for 10 seconds and then someone's gonna go, oh, and then they're gonna punch each other for a second. It just like little awkward stuff that makes me have little question marks floating above my head while I'm watching this stuff, and that's not a good feeling to have. I guess since I'm talking about the story, I'll talk about the finale here. Spoiler alert. So if you're watching this video, you probably already finished the game though, so do what you will. I suppose if you don't want spoilers, skip to here. So the finale of the game is at once the best part and also one of the most confusing parts to me. The lead up when you're running around Hyrule Castle. That was just chasing down like icons on a menu. Just hardly any cohesion to where you're actually supposed to go or why you're supposed to go there. It's just go here because the menu says so. It was a bit annoying, but once you dive below Hyrule Castle into Gloom's Approach, holy shit, why wasn't the rest of the game like this? This is amazing. This exploration of the depths, this monumental challenge of just enemies coming at you left and right, the variety of stuff that it's thrown at you in this short span of time is staggering. The environment is very linear, and it's great for it because there's so much more that the game can do when it says, okay, we're gonna restrict all the shit that you can do, and we're gonna say you gotta go through here. If you want to get past this area, you gotta beat this Lionel. I'm getting ahead of myself though. I really love the lead up to the finale here. The rising of the music, the deeper and deeper and deeper into the cave. It was very emotionally effective and very just loaded with splendor and awe, and it's one of the special moments of the game, one of the few special moments of the game that are entirely unique, and we see all of the elements working together. We see the gameplay working, we see the exploration working, and we see the design of the world working to make you feel things. And so when you finally do dive down and you have the big fight and all the sages show up, yeah, the build up to it was cool, and I guess I'm a little bit like ish that it's just a big fight and you have to, it's like, oh, you got to fight all these things that you are probably familiar with because you've learned how to fight Gibdos at this point. I don't know. It was fun. It was cool. Big battle. I'm impressed that the Switch can deal with it at all, I suppose. You get to the first fight with Ganon. That's kind of cool because he mimics your moves. He'll try and flurry rush you if you're not careful. And then you fight his second form and the health bar goes off the screen. I actually don't know if this was a bug or not. If not, then I guess it's cool. And then you get to the third phase, which, oh my god, I wanted to like it. I wanted to like the third phase of this fight, but it was just annoying, and I'll tell you why. Because it's cool that Ganon turns himself into a dragon and you have to fight him with Zelda in the sky. That on paper sounds awesome. The execution of it, though, is a bit wonky because, first of all, it's just shoot the video game weak point a bunch of times on Ganon as a dragon, and then it's go and stab his forehead, which that took me about 5 minutes because I tried to ride off of Zelda as a dragon and then jump down and then stab him in the head. And I tried to do a plunging attack and I like magnetized away from him because I guess the game wanted me to land on him properly and then hit him. I just feel like so betrayed by the game's constant insistence that I can do things however I want, and then I try to do it that way and it doesn't work. And also just the whole way that like Zelda as a dragon will be like magnetized towards you and try to pick you up. It's like it's supposed to feel big and open and free, but it just feels so stilted and scripted. And then beyond that, in terms of game design, this feels like a bit of a lackluster final challenge because you don't have to do any building, which was like kind of important in this game. It's kind of weird that the finale of it doesn't include any of it, but it's a bunch of little nitpicks at this point. The finale was cool, I just had my gripes with it, and that's how I would say I feel about Tears of the Kingdom as a whole. It's cool, I like it, it's just not perfect. Like, a perfect game would have a functional New Game Plus system, and not just we load you at your save before the final boss with a star next to it to indicate that you did it. It's so non-celebratory, and I thought we would have fixed that from Breath of the Wild. But I digress. I see people throwing around these 10 out of 10 ratings, and I don't understand it, because a lot of this game feels copy-pasted over and over again. There's hundreds of hours of content of things to do, but how much of that is actually original? That the game made it original, not you making it original because you built a hover jet. I suppose I just want something more mature in terms of writing. I want something that is more restricted in terms of puzzles. I want something that allows me to explore, but also kind of gives me a nudge in where I'm supposed to go, because not everything in this game is equally interesting. And at the end of the day, maybe Zelda just isn't the franchise for me if this is how I feel playing Tears of the Kingdom. But I feel like I enjoyed myself a lot more with Breath of the Wild, so maybe I just don't know what I want, and maybe gamers don't know what they want. Either way, I'm happy that Tears of the Kingdom exists for a lot of reasons. I just think that we need to be a little more critical of what we're consuming, and be honest with ourselves when, you know, there's bits of a game that we don't enjoy. And if we don't enjoy it, then maybe it's worth saying, you know what, maybe it's not a 10 out of 10. Maybe it's a 9 out of 10. Maybe it's an 8 out of 10. Maybe there's a lot of things that I enjoy about it, but it's just not perfect. So, with that, please tell me, what is your favorite part of Tears of the Kingdom in the comments? I would like to know, because I think sharing our experiences with this big open world is important. Thanks for watching. I'm Clockwork. This has been a long ramble. I apologize for wasting your time.